It's Monday.
Frick yeah, it is.
Gosh.
It's been Monday all morning.
Man, it just started
Good point.
that way.
Yeah.
It has been Monday all morning.
Man, I woke up and was like, oh, here it is. Here we are.
Yeah.
It's crazy that's a thing, actually. What is it?
I think it's culturally constructed. We do it to ourselves.
It's like Valentine's Day.
Also, the rain doesn't help. Like the gray, rainy Monday morning, you're just like, oof.
This is true. But in the deep south, I will take a little cloud coverage in the summer.
what you know about rolling in the deep?
I'm grateful for it. Hey, we have Chris Grote with us, which is really the news of the
Oh
day.
yeah.
Hey guys.
Yeah.
What's up?
Chris,
I kept forgetting to
It's
get
so
him on
funny.
the podcast, and I was walking down the hall, and he was just kind of whistling.
You podcast.
Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Yeah, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. That's how I would describe.
I love seeing you guys
Good.
kind of get into podcast mode, just like a snap of the finger.
Just boom, here we are. Yeah. Formerly, we were talking about phone cases.
That's right.
Now we have our podcast voices on.
Here we are.
Yep.
You just turn it on. click
Living the
button.
dream.
Here we
Chase,
are.
what are we talking about today?
Well, Ben, let me tell you, dads.
Dads.
Dads?
They exist.
Yeah,
Calling all
just
dads.
total dad moves.
Which is weird because like what 78% of our listener base is women, right?
Gotta be
That's
higher
it.
than that.
Well, we are a
Gotta be.
church, so probably even higher.
Do
Yeah.
men listen to podcasts?
I mean, I do, so I'm
Well,
going
no,
to
but
say
men.
yes.
Do men?
Most men that I talk to actually do listen to podcasts.
Yeah, I'm saying.
Usually,
not
like
ours, I
the
guess.
deeply practical kind of podcasts. Like
Are we
how
not
to
a
get
manly
better.
podcast?
Speaking of manly podcasts, Ben sent me a podcast with Robert Greene on it the other day. Which
Joe Rogan?
No, it wasn't. It was Robert Greene was on a just tragically male podcast.
Ooh.
It was like
Did he fit in?
get together and we'll do the iron circle whatever. And I was
It literally starts
Ritual.
like, "You're a man,
yeah,
man."
it was like, ugh. And then Robert Greene would talk, and he was so smart. And then this other guy would chime in, and I was like, my.
You know, a guy's in trouble doing an interview with someone who's smarter than he is because they say these phrases a lot. Yeah, I really agree with that.
Yeah.
Like, no kidding, you agree with that. You invited the guy on. Anyway, it was an interesting podcast, but that's not this podcast.
Yeah.
Nor do we wish it was. I don't know. Would we accept that bad of a podcast if it got Robert Greene on?
You better know I would agree with everything he says. So, I mean,
Idolatry. Let's dive into that a little bit.
So we're talking
about
about
dads.
dads
Yeah.
today because
Yeah, you gave a
because
talk yesterday.
Yesterday was Father's Day.
On Father's Day, yes.
Yeah.
You gave us the Plan B for men.
Yes.
I think that's how you worded it,
Plan
right?
B for Father's Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a nice panel and lots of flowers on Mother's Day. We just get Ben on Father's Day.
Stand up, shout at the top of your lungs. If you didn't, if you have no idea what we're talking about, you can go
should
back
go
a
back and
previous
listen.
episode and listen to it. I didn't even check. I wonder if like the men shouting like got
Yes,
through.
it made it. It made
That's
it.
so
Yeah.
funny.
I listened in preparation for this today. Also, the people standing up are visible on Facebook.
That's nice.
Even better. Just
Yeah.
silhouettes of men shouting at Ben.
Yeah, reluctantly standing up too. You can just tell.
That definitely worked. You took into account their reluctance for sure.
So behind the scenes information that it will just blow this wide open. I always leave Slack, our group communication app, open and notifications on during service so that people in the room can speak to me on stage like, hey man, your mic's not on or your zipper's down or whatever. And Grote sent me a message which is very out of character. Usually it's like the number of people in service or something happening in Vertical Kids maybe. But Grote sent me a message. I was like, whoa, this must be serious. I need to read this. But at the same time, I was reading Deuteronomy 6.
Also serious.
Yeah, also very serious. So I'm reading Deuteronomy 6, also trying to pay attention to what Grote was saying. And he made a great point. I'm glad I was able to do that because Grote said, hey, dude, if you're going to ask every other dad in the room to stand up, you probably should too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, good call, good call. So, yeah, interesting. The stuff people don't know.
Yeah,
glad you
good
saw
call,
it.
Grope.
I'm glad you saw it. Yeah.
Behind the curtain. So
Yeah.
talk about the Plan B thing. a
Yeah,
little
so
bit.
you called it Plan B. One hilarious name.
Thank you.
But it made sense because all three of the points that you made within the plan started with the letter B,
we are Baptists.
second letter of the
yeah.
alphabet.
Sliding that Baptist in there just a little bit, you know.
So the three words were blessing, boundaries, and battle, which are all very Ben words.
Thank you.
How did you you had references with them, biblical references, but how are you pulling those words out as like a directive for fathers in
Yeah.
their journey?
This was a little bit of a unique talk because it didn't have its beginnings in a group think session.
Yeah.
We were so much in planning Make Way that we kind of left that behind a little bit, and I had to clean up. And I just started thinking like, okay, if I'm a dude in a church service, I would want to hear something that's going to be helpful and practical and not, pardon the phrase here, but not overly spiritual and very honest, and to give me a directive. And I started to think, what are the things that I've had to learn the hard way as a dad? And those are the things that I want to talk about, because I'm always concerned about wanting to make sure that when I teach, it comes from a place that is genuine, because I have struggled through that idea. Otherwise, it just feels too overtly religious and third party. So those three things are things that over the years, fathering my sons and reflecting on my own story, I have really, really struggled with.
What was the what was the backstory with getting him to stand up and almost do a sort of pledge, I guess, is the way-
Militaristic chant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
swearing in an oath.
Yeah. Put your hand over your heart. I pledge
That was the only
allegiance
thing missing
to the
yeah.
Christian flag.
No.
No. Actually, the backstory, you were there for the backstory, and it was a couple of years ago. I was, I don't know if I was recruited to do like a breakout at a student weekend, or somehow I was
Oh, the circle.
yeah, I was
Yeah.
brought in to do like the man talk for the teenage
It was
guys.
Awake 2018, I think.
Yeah, and we got a little practice with that, in that the teenage guys stood up and repeated a few words, and it kind of created a moment. And I follow a church, or used to follow a church pretty closely, Flatirons Church in Colorado. They do a lot of crazy things. I'm not suggesting that people view them or anything, but the leader is very vulnerable, and I respect that about him. And he did that at one of his men's weekends, and I saw it on YouTube. So I thought it was just a way to set a marker for these men that kind of bordered on maybe cheese men's thing, but I felt it was safe enough to do that and give those men that feeling of, I'm a part of something bigger here.
Yeah, I didn't get full John Eldridge vibes. So
Good.
I think you did.
Very good. Thank
You did pretty well.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'm curious. You called on specifically fathers, but not everybody on this podcast either is a father yet or plans to ever be. Looking at you, Austin.
Impotence.
Abstain. How do you see the talk you gave yesterday? Like, is there a way that it applies to just men in general, or is it extremely niche fatherhood?
Actually, that is a great question.
Thanks,
and
man.
thanks for not preparing me for that.
Sorry.
No, it's a great question, because I struggle with that not only in my prep, but also in the conversations I had in the lobby. Obviously, with a very heavy female presence in the building, in churches on Sundays. I think probably you could back that up and apply it to most relationships in your life that matter. I didn't really intend it to be that utilitarian, but if you're thinking about those three things and you have people in your life that you care about, you should probably be willing to do those things for them. Maybe the difference is you don't exclusively have this label and role that it would be very difficult for other people to play. Like, Chris is a friend. I should be willing to do battle for Chris as a friend, and I should be willing to bless Austin if I see good things and experience good things when I'm around him. I should be willing to speak those good things as a friend of his. So yeah, I think they're a little bit Swiss Army.
What did you think, Austin?
Pertaining to whether or not
Was it a more
did I get anything out of his talk? Is that what
Essentially,
you're
yeah,
asking?
live on air.
That's a good way to ask it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I probably went to Father's Day with a little bit of a little bit of bias. Being frank, I'm a little annoyed with Mother's and Father's Day just in general. I was speaking with Reshma about this in the lobby the other day, but I think that it seems very odd to celebrate something for somebody for something they can accidentally do and then never follow up on. And so a lot of times Father's Day seems very, hey, way to go! Here's a participation or not so much award,
Like, here's a mug.
Yeah, I wonder how many texts or calls are sent out on a Father's Day that are never followed up on all year. what I enjoyed about Ben's talk yesterday was a call to action.
Yeah.
You know, you don't hear a lot of that. A lot of churches have somebody come in and talk on a Father's Day and say, "Hey, here are the godly principles about being a father. Hope you apply them. We'll see you next year." You know,
Right.
and I think that Ben's talk made you come to a place where you not only have to consider the actions that need to take place if you are a father, but I'm going to make you commit to doing that publicly in front of people.
Right.
And I appreciate that. I really do. You know, something that kind of gets under my skin is like, and people don't know this, but a lot of times people say like, "Oh, Austin, you're like a dad to 140 kids." And I'm like, no, I'm really not. Because that is a role that you have to make the decision to fill. You know, I can mentor students or I can mentor young men, but that is almost a sacred role that you're playing into there, and that's a role that even just because you have a child doesn't mean you've decided to fill. I liked the activity in the room yesterday, making them make that choice in front of people.
I'm curious. So the reason I had you on is because you're a father to hundreds of kids, whether you want to be or not.
We really value your perspective.
You'd be
as-
shocked how often I hear that.
A ton.
and it's well-meaning.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
I think not that you are a father to 100 kids, because it's not true. I agree, but you do get to see every week the ramifications of absent fathers and how that affects their children. I'm curious, like what the Ben's calling out these things to do as a father to help improve your child's journey as a man or a woman.
Sure.
What are the things you see in kids that aren't getting that? Like, what are the symptoms of that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. You know, I think coming into Madison, knowing I was going to be a student pastor, I was a little curious about what I was going to do here that was going to be consequential at all, because we were coming from a place where there was a little more physical need. And to be frank, Madison is, we have plenty.
Yeah.
What has shown up in the last couple of years, though, is there's a severe lack of parenting, both on mothers and fathers. But I could count on probably, if not one hand, two hands, how many dads I know out of the hundreds or 100+ kids that we have here on a Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I mean, especially active dads that I know, And so I think the fact that, we have men, however many there were in the room yesterday, saying things like, "I accept the challenge of doing this," it says in the statement, like, this is a challenge. It is a challenge to participate in the life of your student. And we see every week, multiple times, dozens of times, kids acting out in ways that say there are 100+ men who have not accepted that challenge, And that shows up in different ways. That shows up, yes, in some behavioral issues. It also shows up in, female students who are more than willing to put their not only emotions, not only their affections, but their bodies out there for any male that will give them attention, no matter how old they are. It shows up in young men who are looking for attention in incredibly unhealthy ways because they've never had a dad that said, "Hey, I'm going to accept the challenge of blessing you when you do things well, but also battling for you." I mean, it's so commonplace in our culture. It's kind of scary.
The interesting thing is that we blame all of those things on the generation. Like, oh, that's that generation.
It gets blamed on their digital habits. It gets blamed on everything, and it's
everything
like,
but the father.
Yeah.
It gets blamed on everything but the father. So
and it's incredibly obvious once you see it.
Yeah. When you do happen to meet the dad who kind of sulks out of the car because the child is taking too long to come out of the church on a Wednesday, or kind of the man who's kicking rocks walking into church and just really doesn't want to be there.
Yeah.
In fact, we get notes written to us on the cars that are in the seats. "I don't want to be here," and that's what they drop in the box. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
we have a pretty large problem going on here.
And I often wonder why we have so many more female volunteers than male volunteers. But the reality is that a lot of times our male volunteers are stepping into a father role willingly for dozens of boys. You know, and that's a scary thing to do.
Yeah.
But that's the role that they're stepping in a lot of times because it's absent a lot of those boys.
There's a vacuum. Yeah, they're filling in the vacuum.
One thing I'm curious about, we're talking about overcoming these students, like overcoming a lot of their parents' missteps or, lack of guidance. I don't know. A lot of words to go towards it. I'm curious, without disparaging your father or grandfather, whoever raised you, like, what are these things that maybe you're having to really overcome as a man now to make up for lost ground in your raising, your rearing?
Who wants to go first on that?
Yeah.
I mean, well, I know I can go first because I think this is one of the things that it's not, you were speaking to generation stuff a minute ago, but I think this really is one, but in the inverse. I think it's emotional intelligence, like knowing how to put language to what you're feeling, not attributing it to just anger or any of these things. Like there's a large well to pull from when it comes to lack of emotional maturity when it comes to my family that's only coming to light in the past year or two. And a lot of it's coinciding with like these books that we're reading as a staff or my own personal journey with my actual family, whether it be with Rachel, whom I love, my wife. I think that would be the number one thing is learning how to be emotionally mature and intelligent for the benefit of others around you and yourself, myself.
Mine's akin to that. It's very close. I've kind of had to dial it in just a little bit, but my family wasn't great. We are great at expectations. There's just like really large expectation as a Derek that certain things will occur and that success is kind of a muddy word, but like that you will achieve your potential. This is the expectation. The affection part though was played second fiddle to that, like expectation first, affection second. And I've had to do a lot of work with my therapist and with reading and with reflection, like where did that come from? And thankfully, I've been able to find some answers to that. And that's what pulls in for me, the generational piece. My grandfather on my father's side was physically abused by a parent. And that does something to someone, especially someone that age and that generation. And that has had its effects on my family. The difficult part to admit, though, is that causes me pause when I go to like hug my sons, or I realize, man, it has been probably 6-10 days since I showed my sons physical affection. But every day I show them an expectation that they should accomplish their potential. So there's just kind of a lack of balance there. I think that'd probably be the number one thing I'm focused on right now as a dad.
Yeah, I can go next. I think for me, and just in my own personal journey of like parenthood is on the way. Like I have a baby coming in November. That's pretty crazy. And so I really have thought about this a lot, and I've been pretty excited to be a dad pretty much our whole marriage, and this is just kind of God's timing for us. But I think as I've gone through therapy, I've realized that maybe kind of how can I put this? As like some sort of defense mechanism, I've blocked out like a lot of unsavory things from my childhood, and nothing. I grew up in a pretty good family. Parents are divorced. You guys kind of know that if you'd heard my other story, my podcast a year or so ago. But it was, I don't know. It's like my parents would always show their support and show their love, but it wasn't like in the way that I needed. Like you talked about emotional intelligence. Like I think that's super rare to find in any family.
Right.
Any kind of emotional or spiritual maturity. My family didn't really go to church. So that's something I definitely want to do is be involved in that way. But I think when I'm thinking about like your plan B stuff as like a father, like what was I missing as a kid from my father? And I love my dad very much, so I don't want to talk down about him in any way whatsoever.
You're not disparaging, just examining.
Definitely. And like I said, I've talked about this with my counselor, but definitely more on the blessing side. Like I really feel like I always, youth ministry was the best thing that ever happened to me. So what you're doing matters. I definitely didn't think of my youth pastor as my dad, but some kind of like shepherding. I've realized I've needed that like guidance, and I didn't really get that from my dad. I got everything else like support from like going to school. My dad bought me my first guitar. You guys know that part of my story. Like he showed his support like in different ways. Provision, but it definitely wasn't like, hey, let's go fishing, just you and me, or let's go shoot guns. My dad's a police officer. I've never shot a gun. Like how crazy is that?
Wow,
But
that
like
is crazy.
just these things that like a father like does with his son that shows like, hey man, like I love you, I'm for you. And I'm the kind of person who's like, I give everybody like so much grace. I'm like, oh, it's just how my dad was raised. His dad wasn't really that way, so I can't blame him too much. So I definitely like what you said. Like, what did you say this weekend? Like the things that were handed to us, we don't have to hand down.
Yeah, something like
I
that.
don't see like what my dad did was super negative. That's just, you don't know how to communicate that stuff as a kid. But I know going forward that, man, I want to be somebody who can provide that kind of guidance, spiritual direction for my daughter who's coming in November, but also like whoever else, comes down the road. Like I want to be that kind of shepherd and guide for them that I didn't really get at that age. That was, very developmental.
I think we can also acknowledge that there's way more resources available to us now on a lot of the stuff we're talking
Holy
about
smokes, yeah.
than there was when they were, coming of age like we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tried to make that really strong point yesterday. It isn't that we're trying to demonize our fathers or the people that have come before us, or that we're calling ourselves to perfection. The goal is refinement over generations to get to a place, that you take one or two steps further than what you were offered growing up, and that can make a huge difference in your family system. I think a lot of men especially struggle with this idea of like, oh my gosh, I need to make a list of all the ways that my father was just a crappy dad, and I need to make sure and correct all of those. And that never works either, because they're usually departing from their personality and what was modeled in too strong of a way, and they're overcompensating, and kids know that. So yeah, I appreciate your honesty there. It's more the idea of like, okay, what we were handed, how do we refine that as we are being fathers to our own kids? Well,
it's hard too because like in a divorced family, you have a dad, but you don't see him that often. Like I saw my dad every other weekend and on Wednesday nights, and Wednesday nights is like youth group night. So I was super involved as a high school student. So I would be at church. I feel bad for my dad now because he would pick us up and take us to church, and then drop us off back at my mom's house. But yeah, so I kind of feel for him in that way. But it's just like, man, divorce makes it even harder. We lived in the same town, but it was really messy. The divorce was, and a lot of animosity between my folks. So that's another thing too, is just, man, like I do not want, nobody wants to get divorced, I don't think, but like I definitely don't want that for my children. So when we talk about battling, I'm not just going to battle in boundary and bless for my kids. Like that's something that I took away too. Like I want to do for my wife and for that kind of different dynamic of my family, because I do want my children to grow up with godly parents who stuck it out when times got hard, and so they can look at that and see that it can be done. So
looking back with you bringing that up, I probably was deficient in addressing just the complexity of family dynamics. You only have like 28, 32 minutes, whatever happens on a weekend. You just can't address it all. But there may have been, I'll acknowledge here in this recording that there may have been some people that were a little bit frustrated. Like, this sounds pretty clean, but man, family systems are pretty crazy these days. Maybe that's something that we should address next time Mother's Day and Father's Day rolls around. I don't know.
You tell me, man. You're the pastor.
Right, you're making the plan. Plan C.
What about you, Austin?
I've been sitting here thinking about it. Looking back through your highlights yesterday, I think probably for me, I don't think I had a good understanding as a kid or a young man about boundaries. I don't think that was set up well for me. And it's not that there weren't boundaries in our house. And again, kind of like you said, Grove, my dad is a very good man. And I look up to him in a lot of ways. But just kind of the real situation was he just wasn't around a ton, be it for work or other things. And so a lot of the boundaries were set up by my mom at a very young age. And I think that that's a young man doesn't necessarily know what to do with that. You know, you have this tension and this pull when you're around your dad to kind of be a man and to lead in certain ways. And I think I'm trying to think of the best way to say this without being disparaging in any way. I think that when boundaries are set up only by a mother, for a young man, there's just a lot of confusion that happens there. How much
That is
of this
very well said.
How much of this is my responsibility? How much of this, is realistic for me? And then the older you get, the more you push those boundaries, and you don't understand why they're healthy for you. And you need a man to sit you down and say, this is why this is important. And while that has happened in mine and my dad's relationship, I think it happened much later than it should have. And I had seen him fight certain boundaries with my mom because he was around only so often, And so in absence, those boundaries tend to become less and less intense. And so I think that the boundary bit at the end of your talk was important. The more I've thought about it since then.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point in that in all of this, timing is actually very important as well.
Yeah, I think so.
The right boundaries, the right blessing at the wrong time. And in fact, Jack Page fought that a lot, as he admitted in his story.
I thought about that a lot in his story. And around the time Jack told his story, I was having these sorts of conversations. I'm in a family where we have 4 boys, and my dad has always kind of done the same thing. He's always been on the road, and he's a very hard worker, but he's always been at least a little absent. And so Jack's story, when I was listening to him, I was like, he hit something that I hadn't ever thought about, in that there are certain milestones when you're going through life. And when every one of those is associated with your mother and not your dad, I think there are certain transactions that you make.
Yeah. And you can overcome those, but I think, often we're so careful about, man, we're defining this problem, and we don't want to seal people out like, you missed it, you'll never get it back.
No.
I think from my perspective now, as a 41-year-old man, there's a certain level of freedom and definition. I'm just defining that this happened, and that I had to respond to it. And I'm not saying that it's wrecked my entire life, but like you said, Grote, to push this stuff aside actually immobilizes us as fathers to a large degree. Because I just kind of push that aside. I lived through it. I don't want to live through it again. The terrible part about that, though, is you end up getting in this repeat. You end up getting in this loop. And that's a little bit of what I was trying to shake yesterday. You don't have to hand down what you were handed, and this is some of the most important work of this century for us to try to correct this. And we're the men for the job. And that was a lot of the emphasis behind that is don't ignore what's happened, and as a result, recreate it in your own family system.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think we go one of 2 ways. I think we ignore, and you said something that's really smart. I don't remember when we were talking about this, Ben, but you were talking about our interpretation of the story. I think for so many guys, they only focus on their interpretation. And I think for some of us, we say, well, he said that's not the way it happened, so I guess all my emotions are invalid.
Yes.
So being able to say, like, this is what happened, this is the way I viewed that, this is the work that I have left to do here, and this is how this can affect my future and how I can change it. That's very important.
Yeah, and very empowering. So a question that I've been taught through my men's community and therapy, and I'm going to say that until I die, until it makes people so nervous to actually go do it. But therapy is so crucial, has been for my development. But I used to ask the question over my family systems, over my relationship with my dad, is that true? And I've stopped asking that question. It really doesn't matter if it was true. It was true for me. This was true for me. This is what I needed. This is what I wish I had. I wish I had that blessing. I wish there was an understood I love you in my family, the extended handshake, the fishing trip, the hunting trip, those sorts of things. There was the understood I love you, but based on the way that I'm built, I needed to hear those words. And I've spent most of my adult life feeling weak because of that. But now I've realized, you know what, whether it was true or not that my dad loves me, and I know this is true. We were just together yesterday. What was true for me is that I needed to hear that, and I didn't hear it very much. So when I get to that level of observing and thinking, then that sort of thing motivates me to take action on these 3 steps with Owen and with Shepard.
It's good.
Well said. All right, next. We done?
Y'all are dads. I'm not. You can.
It sounds like it to me. I mean, I think it would be bad or kind of redundant to be like, what does blessing mean? What is blessing? I mean, just listen to the episode above it.
You heard it here first. Next segment. Grote, would you do the honors?
We're
Do
going
you, even know,
first.
do you even know what the honors are?
I don't know what the honors are.
Austin, do you
Are
know?
we singing recommends? Is that the honors?
Yeah, this is recommends.
Oh, okay. I haven't done this in a while.
This is not recommends.
All right. What are we doing?
Ask us.
Oh.
Oh.
Hey, there it is.
Man, a moment of tension on our
Man,
podcast
what
today.
great podcast culture we have. Solid fan base.
Did we mention it's Monday?
It is Monday.
All day.
We've now entered into a new segment for which you have prepared a pretty excellent question.
Yeah, I have taken the privilege of asking the question that I am asking of us anything.
Non-anonymously.
Of. Yes. Not, yes. Which we've never claimed that you have to be anonymous. We just keep it anonymous.
Honestly, we just attribute them all to Rachel Tharp at this point.
Rachel
not?
Tharp, thank you for this question today. It was a really good one. It had a lot of provokingness to it. I don't know. All right, in the
What you
spirit of what else you got? What is that from? Oh, that's from The Office. When they're dancing in the cafe,
Always.
and Aaron's like, "What else you got?" When Andy, no, the wedding.
What's the question?
Oh yeah, sorry. All right, the question in the spirit of Father's Day: top 5 movies you can't wait to show your kids or your nieces and nephews.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a cool uncle.
I'll go first. Is that okay?
Yeah, you're doing all 5 at once.
Yeah, I'm very proud of my list.
You've thought about this.
He's had time to think
I
about
have.
it. We haven't.
I sent you the question yesterday. I don't know why you haven't thought of it yet.
No.
Okay.
There's no way.
I mean, I have my answers though, so I'm good to go.
All right, I'll go 5 to 1 because I think they're in order.
Okay, I like it.
Number 5,
Golly.
Shaun of the Dead.
Oh.
I don't know what age this will be, but it is a really, really good movie. And I don't think it's not in like the discussion of greatest movie of all time, but you remember this movie and when you watch it the first time. It's a lot to take in. Probably really different from any other comedy you've seen before.
I've never seen that movie.
You've never seen Shaun of the Dead?
No.
Okay, I'll adopt you.
Live and grow on the couch.
I'm here for it.
Shaun of the yeah. All right, can you adopt somebody older than you? Surely, right?
I think you can.
All right, number 4, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's an underrated one.
Once again, you've probably never seen anything like this before. You remember it the first time you watch it. Super quirky, really funny, memorable, great movie. Number 3, this is a top 5 movie of all time. Fight Club.
I'm surprised that's not higher on your list because I know that
When you hear the next 2, you will understand why it's not higher on the list.
Well, Pixar has to make an appearance.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't know. We'll see. I'm a big DreamWorks guy. Fight Club. They need to see the greatest of male body of all time in Brad Pitt. I mean, the thing we all aspire to.
pretty much unravel.
8-pack, tight pecs, great hair.
This guy doesn't age.
This is the kind of podcast we do.
Yeah,
right?
we're here.
Yeah.
We just got a whole new demographic.
Subscribe. All right, number 2. Ben frickin' called it. Toy Story.
Absolutely.
It's not my favorite of all 4 of them, but it's the most important because it kicks off what's a 4-part series? A quadrilogy?
Who knows?
I don't know.
I'm on a
Mission
film
Impossible.
trilogy.
Rachel
I'm a film
Tharp will
critic.
tell us.
Mission
film
Impossible. What else has like 17? Fast and the Furious.
Furious. Yeah.
Look, I will even
Saw.
say
Harry Potter.
as
Saga.
a saga.
Saga.
We break rules to our own questions. If you say Toy Story, they're all allowed. I mean, it's a continuation. It's just like
Is it understood that we're going to watch all of them?
Yeah, just
You
understood.
disagree?
You know how I feel about sequels.
Toy, come on. We don't have time for that argument.
Yeah.
Continue.
All right. Number 1, last and absolutely not least,
Shrek.
Maybe even the
Steal
most.
mine, Yeah.
I almost put Shrek on the list.
Shrek, I'll tell you, Shrek's on my list.
Number one, you probably could have guessed it. The Dark Knight,
That's a good
greatest
one.
performance of all time with Heath Ledger. So you got to see it. You can skip Batman Begins. That's what I did the first time I ever watched The Dark
Yeah, I
Knight.
agree with that.
So there's my 5: Shaun of the Dead, Hitchhiker's Guide, Fight Club, Toy Story, The Dark Knight. Probably not in that order because
It's a good
it'd be kind of weird to start with Shaun of the Dead before Toy Story.
I mean, do what you feel.
It's my kids.
Yeah, your
Generational
kids, you
sin
can do
being
what you want.
fixed.
All the way from Toy Story to Dark. That's crazy.
Dark Knight, yes.
Dark Knight.
It's a
that's
well-rounded
crazy.
kid. I like it.
Yeah.
All right, who's next?
What do I appreciate about art? Okay, I'm going to go next, and with the caveat
Okay.
that my sons are 13
yeah,
and
already old.
Yeah, so it would be a softball for me to be like Toy Story, Inside Out. Yeah, like
just
those-
nothing but Pixar movies.
they've already seen these, so I'm thinking about movies that they haven't seen that I want them to see. Part of the clarification for this list is also so that they understand the things that I'm quoting in our house all the time,
See, okay,
and they
I
look
was,
at me blankly.
I was thinking the same thing. I say lines from the same 5 movies daily.
Yeah, so
Step
you're like-
Brothers.
Yeah, so you want people to be able to understand this. Also, I realize that I'm opening myself up to like make fun of Ben, but hey, we're all used to that by now, right? That's just how it goes. Okay, so I will go. Yeah, I'll go 5-1.
Okay.
That's what you did, right?
Yes.
Or if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, high standard.
Yeah. Okay. So first, I'm going to say just because I remember being so moved by this movie, an old one, Schindler's List.
Yeah.
That's a very Ben answer.
Yeah.
Have you seen this?
That's
Schindler's List?
horrifying.
No.
It
I have
it
not.
is. It's terrible.
Have you seen it?
I have. That's
Yeah,
terrifying.
right. But okay, I think it's an important part of history, right? All right. So
Yep.
I'm gonna actually these are put together, but there are other reasons for this next one.
This is explaining a lot about Owen to me.
Yeah.
Perks of being a wallflower.
Yes.
What's more sad movies?
Schindler's List. Yeah. So the next one would be Saving Private Ryan.
Great.
Great film. Really great
yeah,
film.
Yeah, that deserves to be.
And
on
not just because
Little
of the
intense for a kid. but,
yeah, not because of the storyline, but there's so many other things. Both my sons are pretty interested in production level and stuff like that, and
I don't know what you're talking
We
about.
do Dunkirk.
you could take a deep dive on that. Okay, next one. Robert Duvall has to make an appearance not only once but twice. Open Range.
Okay.
Open Range.
Greatest Western of all time.
Quote
right there.
I quote that movie all the time. If I say whiskey barkeep one time in my house in a day, I say it 5 times, and my kids are like, "What? What do you?
It's a lot of whiskey to be
What do
drinking in
you
one day,
mean?"
Ben.
Like so, yeah. It's anyway.
Lead pastor. Been
It's just
there.
one of those things I quote when I'm like feeling confident. So the next one, I'm going to bend
Looking at you, Cammy.
whiskey barkeep. So I'm going to bend the list just a little bit. This was actually introduced to me by my father-in-law. I view it as a movie, although it was not. Lonesome Dove.
Yeah.
Lonesome
beat me to
Dove.
it.
Yep. So except for the part with the snakes, very, very, very well done. Yeah. So I have a lot of quotes from that I probably couldn't say on the podcast, but man, Robert Duvall,
I grew up on it.
probably quintessential Robert Duvall, wouldn't you say?
How you gonna feel when he dies soon?
Oh my gosh.
Soon.
You seen him?
Yeah,
Wrinkly.
he's probably actually as old as I think James Taylor is, Robert Duvall. So
James Taylor looks great for 70, whatever.
yeah. So all right, last one.
I hope
and
Snow
James-
Day.
I hope James Taylor dies soon so he'll quit talking about him.
last Snow Day.
Snow Dogs.
Yeah, dodgeball. All right, last one. This is solely because of the quotability.
Shrek.
Also because of like the age I was when I first saw this movie. So I'm just saying, take it easy on me.
Oh,
guys.
I bet.
I'm just take it easy on me. All right.
All right.
Tombstone.
Oh, that's not what I
Oh,
thought
that's,
you were
good.
gonna
That's a
say.
good movie.
Yeah.
This is the most Ben list. I
Very-
probably could have come
very
up with
manly.
this list.
Very
I didn't
manly.
even
I
have to
wanted
be
you to
here for
experience
this.
a lot of death in this little watch party we got going on.
Yeah, Tombstone. So I will say Kurt Russell, yes, all right, but Val Kilmer and his role in this movie.
Yeah,
I
I
don't think
don't-
he ever got any
Legendary.
better.
I don't use the term man crush with you often because I think it offends you a little bit. But you have a full blown man crush for Val Kilmer in Tombstone.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's pretty legitimate.
You know, well, it's one of those where like you see a character and you're like, I will never ever be that guy, but I sure wish that I was. Just like
Yeah.
confident and says the perfect thing at the perfect moment, and
Yeah.
I don't know, really like revered and feared and all that stuff. And
seared and
dying,
mirrored.
weird. I don't know. That little scene where he has the cup and he starts twirling it around, I'm like, man, one of the best movie scenes ever.
Batman.
Yeah. So that's my list. I don't know. I may change it after we watch all of these, but and there's a guarantee. I can guarantee you that my sons will hate most of these.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking the
I
same
can't. I
thing.
can't even
was like, I
picture
don't know if they're
Shepard
gonna
watching
sit
these
through it.
movies.
Shepard,
You may ruin Shepard. With
I don't
those
know if he
movies.
say. I don't know if he can handle Saving
Schindler's
Private Ryan.
List.
Yeah, he's
maybe
already
wait-
worried about
maybe wait
Saving
a while.
Private
Yeah.
Ryan. But
I'm trying
we
to.
started with
I'm trying to
Schindler's
think
List.
about Shepard watching Schindler's List.
Just skip the first 20 minutes of Saving
Can't you
Private
see
Ryan.
a Shepard like with his popcorn? He's putting the M&Ms on there, like, oh, this is such a great snack. I love the world. And then it just.
Can you imagine Shepard watching the knife scene?
No.
Where the Nazi stabs the dude like
No.
real slow.
No.
Man,
Great scene.
great scene.
God
All right,
protect
that's
him.
my list.
All
I'm
right, I'll go
sticking
next.
to it. Yeah.
I'm gonna break mine down into like.
Bye, Ben.
See you guys
Bye,
later.
Ben.
You want to
You
watch
don't-
my movies?
You don't want to hear mine?
No, you're
That's
not
cool.
that important to me.
I get it.
Let's play the game if Ben actually goes back and listens to this, just to hear your answers.
All right, so mine, I'm gonna break mine down into like rated G, then rated like PG-13, and then like 1, just kind of
Overall.
any age works. So I'm a Toy Story guy too,
Mm-hmm.
for sure. One of my favorite Pixar movies growing up, and then I'm gonna go in that same theme for my second one, Lion King.
Yep.
I was
Great
thinking
Deserves to be on the
the
It's a
list.
classic. It's a classic.
Yeah.
Also one of
Great
my favorite,
music.
one of my favorite Disney cartoons. When we get into the PG-13 stage, I'm gonna go Joe Dirt, of course. One of my favorite comedies.
I
Should've
love that
expected
you
that.
love Joe.
One of
Dirt.
my favorite comedies. Some of David Spade's best work, and then
I think his best work.
probably his
I
best
think
work.
it's Pete.
Joe Dirt 2. Haven't seen it. Couldn't tell you. Probably going to skip it.
Sequels are irrelevant.
Yeah, especially that kind of stuff. Joe Dirt, one of the most quotable movies of all time. Awesome. And then I'm also going to go. You got to throw a Tom Hanks in there one, right? Forrest Gump.
That's 2 Tom Hanks. You already said Toy Story.
There you go. Yeah, 2
Love
Tom
Tom
Hanks.
Hanks.
Masterpiece of a movie. Lots of history in it.
That is, that is a good one to put on the list.
Entertaining.
Yeah, I
Just-
agree with that one.
Just a great movie.
Yeah,
And then was that 4?
yeah.
And then I'm gonna kind of pull the whole like saga trick.
So you're gonna
For the
list
last one.
8 of them as no,
Yeah.
not 8 of them.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Yeah.
The Harry Potters. I love the Harry Potters. I was a huge Harry Potter geek growing up, so
I
it's
feel like
near and dear to my heart.
If you're the level of fan that you are, I feel like that's like an obligation.
I
as a
think I
parent,
was just
right?
gonna say if we ended up having a kid, that would be Caitlin's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It's like Mike Petyak,
So good.
Petyak with Parker, who he's like he turned Parker into a full blown Star Wars nerd
Yeah.
just because
Yeah.
I have to show you these movies. I don't care how you feel about them,
Yeah.
but
I didn't
luckily
love,
Parker-
And
the
you will
shift
love them.
Yes.
to Alfonso Ribeiro. Wait, that's not his name. That's Carlton.
Yeah,
I
what?
was like, whoa, I didn't watch them.
What was the director of the third Harry Potter?
I could.
Oh,
not
okay.
tell you.
He also directed Gravity.
Stand by. Oh gosh, what is his name? Hold on, Stand by.
It
What
was
is
the
the-
third one.
Yeah,
Yeah, they like made like a.
What's the
creative-
third one called?
It went from Prisoner of Azkaban. They went from Christopher Columbus, who's great,
Yeah.
into like Alfonso something.
yeah, Alfonso Cuarón.
Alfonso
Sorry,
Soriano.
Alfonso. Sorry, Carlton. I didn't mean to throw your name like that.
It's disparaging.
You
him
said
like
that, I was like, wait, what?
What? Yeah, they made like a weird shift in the third one. They corrected it though, and they got really.
I tell you what, 7 and 8 are fantastic
They're
movies.
brilliant.
Oh yeah, they're good.
so
They're
I
really
mean,
good.
the level of the effects and stuff went up
Yeah.
to they
So
got
good.
way better at like the spell battles and stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good.
yeah, it's good.
Man, I'm not a
great
Harry Potter
series.
guy.
Great series.
I am by association.
That's
great.
true. You
They're
married
great.
a nerd.
I did. Okay, so I'm gonna do these as cool uncle, not as dad, which gives me a little bit of leeway in that I can just show them some of my favorite movies.
Make sure you stay on your mic there, sir.
These aren't necessarily in order. I think I would have to think about order a little bit more. But first on the list is Green Mile. I love the Green Mile. It's a great movie.
That's a heavy one.
It's a good one.
Yeah. Man, Tom Hanks is all over these lists.
so good.
So Forrest Gump was close, but I love Green
He's
Mile.
so freaking
Next on the list, The Big Lebowski. Great movie. I actually rewatched it the other day because they put it on Netflix, and I forgot how freaking funny Jeff Bridges is in that movie.
Yeah.
It's so good. Third, Ben Took, Lonesome Dove. I watch it at least once a year. My dad, that's kind of actually, I think my dad made me watch The Lonesome Dove, and it's good. Love it. Number 2, Good Will Hunting. Robin Williams, just fantastic.
Great movie.
I really like Patch Adams as well, but I think Good Will Hunting is probably his best. And then the last one is Zoolander. I think I had to put it in there because it's one
so
of
serious to the end.
it's one of those movies.
We're gonna cap it all off with Ben Stiller's greatest
I
work.
was like, I have to have a comedy in here, and Zoolander is like, I don't know why, but it is just so
so
funny
it
to
really
me.
is. Gosh, I need to go back and watch
I
that.
love Ben Stiller.
Yeah.
I dadgummit, another example of sequels not working.
Yeah.
I think sequels work when they're built, when it's written out as a trilogy or whatever. Like it's supposed to be this, not a capitalization
So,
on
comedy
success.
sequels don't work.
Here's my rule on sequels. If they are written, like if it's based on a book, the sequels are typically worth it because they were written out far in advance. You get the whole plot of the book, and usually they have all of them in mind.
Yeah.
When it's just like a random movie and they're like, well, we made some money off that, let's do a sequel, it's just garbage.
Okay, but Space Jam 2.
No, I won't even watch it.
Come on.
Won't watch it. That's a
Yeah.
good question. I feel like I would
Thanks.
change my answers if I had time to think, but that's just what.
Maybe we'll revisit it
Yeah.
in the fall or something.
For the record, this is the kind of thing we would spend 3 hours debating.
This
on a
is
staff
what I
retreat or
wish.
Something.
Last 10% here of my thoughts. This is what the podcast I want it to be. That I'm not allowed to have it. So we just every now and then we got to tease it out. All right, should we do some recommends?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Recommends,
Yep, nailed it. Recommends.
Recommends.
Oh, you know what? We should wish a happy belated birthday to Janice.
Yeah, yeah. We actually had the pleasure of
Yep.
wishing her happy birthday. What, 3 days ago? 2 days ago?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Was it Friday?
The matriarch
Saturday?
of our podcast.
Yeah, our guiding light at all times on this podcast.
Inspiration, our muse.
Our foundation in this podcast. Janice.
Thanks, Janice.
What's her last name?
Janice.
Does she have one?
I feel like y'all should know this.
I don't know.
I bet she doesn't know
It's
our
kind of like
last name, though.
Moby. You don't need a last name.
She's just Janice, the only
Oprah.
Janice.
It's like Oprah.
Thanks, Janice.
Thanks,
All right,
Janice.
want, need, wear, read. Want. I think it's you, Austin.
Want is me, yeah, and I'm pumped about this.
That's good.
Yeah, I really am because I'll lead in by saying where I discovered this a couple weeks ago. Caitlin, my wife, of whom I love,
Yeah, it's true.
and I we took a weekend and we went to the lake with some friends, and we showed up there.
Some of your friends.
Her sure,
friends.
yeah, both,
Oh,
I
okay.
guess. Good people. But I showed up there and was eating. I'm trying to think of where we discovered this first. I think it was tacos. We were eating tacos that night. We did like a taco bar, and there was like a bottle of like a spice there, and people were just throwing it all over their tacos and everything. It's delicious. Next morning, I'm eating eggs. They're doing the same thing. Also, that evening they were making drinks, and it may have made its way around the rim of
Drinks.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yeah, a beverage of
Oh.
any sort. It made this spice made its way around the rim of many glasses, and I was like, "What is this lovely?" It's called tahine. I don't know if y'all have ever seen this,
Never heard
but
of
they
that.
told me that they had a friend who had been working in Mexico, and they found this tahine. You can get it at Kroger, but wherever he was at, they put it on everything.
What is it?
It's kind of like think like a finer. It's kind of hot, kind of like a crushed red pepper kind of deal, but it's finer. It's not quite as intense, and it just has a fantastic flavor. You can buy a
Spicy?
It's not as hot as you would think. It just gives a little zest to it.
I am a wimp.
It is hot, but I mean not like that. So you can get it at Kroger in a little bottle. It's like $1.99 or whatever, and literally you can put it on anything.
So
It's
what was it best on?
I really enjoyed. So
That's a good question, Greg.
yeah, I really enjoyed it on like breakfast tacos. I made breakfast tacos that morning with some eggs and bacon on the
breakfast
griddle or
taco.
whatever, and
So
put it
good.
on some corn tortillas and just put
What's
it
the
on.
profile? Like smoky?
Fine. It's fine.
No, the
It's
profile, the taste.
it's really hard to explain.
You just
it's-
gotta try it.
It's hot, but it's not as hot as you're thinking.
Has it replaced your date and whatever sriracha?
Yeah. It's like I would toss it
Interesting.
in meal prep. You can even toss it on chicken before you put it
the grill.
on the grill. It's
Mm.
it's kind of a all around go to.
Interesting.
Yeah. Tahine.
Where do you find it at the Kroger?
You just in the normal spices. I mean,
Really?
At
It's-
the Kroger's.
apparently it had
Kroger's.
been there and I had just never seen it before.
There's a lot there to look at.
Yeah.
It's overwhelming.
It's delicious.
Well, you know what? We were talking about a little bit of recommend rules before we hopped on here, and I said that food can take the place of want or need depending on the purpose it's fulfilling in your life, right?
Yeah.
That seems like it's on its way to a need. It sounds like, but it still sounds like an enjoyment kind of thing right now. If I can speak into your life a little bit,
Sure.
great.
Give me a year. It'll be a need.
Give you. Oh, I was 96. Mine, it skipped right past the want and went straight to the need.
This is also
'Cause
food?
Yes.
Oh.
And it's about to implement itself into a large part of my life.
What
You guys
about
ever
Coke?
tried instant rice?
No.
I haven't.
I have not.
I was a very large skeptic for a long time. I looked down upon it. I'm the kind of guy that wants to cook everything from scratch whenever I do cook because I like, surely the hard way is the better way, correct? It's just
Is
what us
instant-
hipsters believe.
instant rice?
It's instant rice
Gotcha.
by the brand VT. VEETEE. VD. VD. I've tried their basmati rice so far.
Okay.
I love basmati rice.
Yeah.
We typically go jasmine because it kind of works with more.
So good.
But their basmati, heat that poke it a bunch of times with a fork, shove it in the microwave for 2 minutes. I'm telling you, throw some Costco tiki masala over it, throw some Hannah Dal over it.
So good.
So many options.
I have to. It must be pretty good because I'm shocked that you're eating this.
I agree.
Okay.
Let that be your barometer.
All right.
It's so good. It doesn't even have like that fake instant rice plastic smell that some of them have.
Yeah.
It just smells like you just cooked some rice.
Where
on the
did you get
stove.
it? It's at Kroger.
Kroger.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the I think it's in the Asian section. Orient. What do they call it? I think it's just Asian.
Oriental.
No.
think they call it
How
Asian.
much rice is it though?
I think this one was 9.9 ounces. I split it up between 2 servings of tikka masala, and it worked great.
Hmm.
So VD rice, basmati. If you're
That's
saucing
interesting
it
because
up.
we eat rice at pretty much every meal.
Now
So-
I don't know how cost effective it is for meal prepping, but if you're on a pinch and you want
Something
to
quick.
yeah, and you don't want to cook some rice,
do love
for
rice.
everybody, it's a really really good option.
All right.
Where?
So where?
Yeah. All right. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this one. Talking to Janice this past week really inspired me to really, really think about my wear this week.
Oh.
Because, you only have so many years left in your life at any given time, right? Like your days are numbered. And so I've decided to travel more as of late. And a place that I've traveled in the past few years that really speaks to me for my wear is the Pacific Coast.
Okay.
Specifically the Pacific Coast. Specifically the Pacific Coast.
Pacific.
Yeah.
I got you.
My favorite part is taking what do they call the highway? The PCB? PCH, Pacific Coast Highway, is that right?
Uh-huh.
Taking that up the coast of California into Oregon,
Yeah.
seeing all the redwoods and stuff. You talk about a great wear. That is a great wear. Fantastic.
I feel like some people caught on to it, and then half the people are
What do you mean?
very confused about where you're going with this.
It's almost like
Just where?
the three of us wear the same things every day.
Just where?
So you're just
And
gonna
so
start talking about
sometimes you just
locations?
gotta flex the rules a little bit to make the segment
You
work.
could make it like, where are you going next?
Where am I going? I'm going to Fort Morgan in August.
Ooh.
We're gonna be in
booked it last
Colorado next month.
Don't say Colorado right after I say Fort Morgan, Alabama.
It's Colorado to the natives.
Yeah.
too,
Where is
by the way.
Fort Morgan?
So you know where Dolphin Island is?
Mm-hmm.
There's a peninsula that juts out from the other way. No bridge between them, but they're like literally like 5 miles separated.
It's like a
two of them.
beachy area.
If it's
gotcha.
off a peninsula from the Orange Beach area.
10-4.
Yeah. So there's your where.
Where? All right, read. Redeem us, Groot.
What do you mean? It's a great answer.
I'll jump on the where,
Where?
not the where.
Where?
We're going to Asheville, North Carolina.
Oh, nice.
Whoa, what are y'all
Next
doing
month.
I love Asheville.
Little baby moon.
Baby moon. I hate that term. Mainly because of the way it sounds.
Well, it was supposed to be just like a birthday thing because Hannah's birthday is in July. And then we got pregnant. So we're like, hey, let's.
Asheville's cool. It's a cool
I've heard,
city.
I've heard good things.
Yeah.
I haven't been there yet. But
I've
I'm
heard a
excited.
lot about Asheville lately from a lot of different people.
We were there a
Which
couple
sounds like
years ago.
it's trying to say something.
Great coffee.
Avery is like obsessed with that area.
Maybe
She's already
Avery was
sent
the
me.
most recent person.
She's already
yeah.
sent me a ton of recommendations.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's our where for for Reed. I'm gonna kind of cheat a little bit because I was
17.
I was reading this before we picked it up on staff, and I actually told Ben he should read it. And so I want to.
the
I don't think
truth-
that's cheating.
I wanna
the
take-
truth
I think
comes
that's
out.
claiming your spot.
Yeah, I want to take
This
credit
is
for
your
this. Emotionally Healthy Discipleship by Pete Scazzaro. Pete is awesome.
Yeah.
He's we were just talking about emotional maturity and emotional health, and
Mm.
Pete Scazzaro he's a pastor up in New York, or he had a church and he stepped down so he could focus on the emotionally healthy stuff that he does. And he's just such a super wise dude that I look up to. I know Ben does too. And we get to read him as a staff, Emotionally Healthy Discipleship. He also has a book called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality that I know some of us on staff have read. And it's like the #1 book I recommend to people in our small groups to know themselves.
Do you get a lot of joy out of like saying that you read something that Ben has picked up and recommends?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love that.
I feel like it's just specific to Ben, though.
Yeah, it's really only Ben.
Like if Megan came on here and recommended something that I put on her, like I would feel pride in that, but it's not anywhere close to where it is with Ben.
I'm excited. So, like you said, we're reading about that book as a staff now, and I'm excited for it. I'm a couple chapters in, or however far we are.
I feel like we should make a new rule. Grote, you just inspired me. You have 2 options with your where.
Okay.
It's either your where or your where,
Oh.
right?
Okay.
So you got to distinguish which way you're answering
Probably
at the
be
top
helpful.
of your answer.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if it's-
where and
yeah.
where. And we'll let the
we could
people
get into
figure it
some
out.
super ambiguous locations, like just
Yeah.
Tahiti.
Ludlow,
ambiguous?
Missouri.
Texas.
Yeah. Flower, Texas. Flower Mound? What? Mount?
Yeah,
What's that town?
Sounds right.
See? Katy, Texas. See you next week.